Welcome to Jacksonville, Florida, a city known for sunshine, beaches, and ghosts that apparently didn't get the memo about retiring to Boca Raton. If you've ever wondered what happens when centuries of pirates, soldiers, and riverfront tragedies mix with Florida humidity, congratulations, you're about to find out. Jacksonville may look like a peaceful coastal city by day, but once night falls, the city's past likes to clock back in for the night shift. Now, I know what you're thinking. Haunted? In Jacksonville? Isn't this the land of flip-flops and fish tacos? Oh, it is. But between the old theaters, forgotten cemeteries, and riverfront hotels, this city has enough ghost stories to fill a Gators fan's cooler. And some of these spirits are as stubborn as Floridians arguing about college football. We're talking about places where lights flicker for no reason, voices echo through empty halls, and cold chills hit you faster than that regret after ordering gas station sushi. From haunted theaters where actors refuse to leave the stage, to hotels where guests check in but never really check out, Jacksonville's got stories that'll make even skeptics sleep with the lights on. And don't worry, we're not just talking about random "my cousin's friend's aunt saw a ghost" tales. These stories come from witnesses, workers, and the occasional terrified tourist who thought it'd be fun to explore alone. Spoiler, it wasn't. So grab a drink, lock your doors, and maybe keep your flashlight handy, because tonight we're diving headfirst into Jacksonville's most haunted places. So are you ready? Let's do it. Chelsea Courtyards in Jacksonville, Florida, formerly known as the Carriage House Apartments, may look like an ordinary mid-century apartment complex, but don't be fooled by its normal exterior. Behind the pastel walls and neatly trimmed hedges lurks a long history of bizarre and ghostly happenings. This place has earned a spot in local haunted folklore, even popping up on national haunted places lists, thanks to its roster of phantom residents. In other words, renting here might come with an extra roommate or two, and they're definitely not listed on the lease. But hey, the rent is reasonable if you don't mind a ghost or two crashing on the couch, right? The most notorious tale centers around Apartment 40, which has the kind of reputation that makes horror movie sets look tame. According to legend, this unit saw such extreme poltergeist activity that for years, nobody could live there peacefully. We're talking objects flying off shelves on their own, mysterious blood dripping down the walls, and a gut-churning smell of rotting flesh that no amount of industrial-strength air freshener could cover. Things got so bad that management supposedly threw up their hands and turned Apartment 40 into a storage room. Better to house mops and boxes than to subject another poor tenant to whatever uninvited guest lurked within. Even ghosts, it seems, can be very territorial about their living space. Neighbors still whispered that even with the unit empty of human occupants, strange thumps and whispers would seep out in the dead of night, like an invisible house party that never ends. The dark origins of Apartment 40's hauntings trace back to a gruesome event in 2000. On February 1st of that year, a Jacksonville man named Tracy Moss went on a violent rampage that ended right inside this very complex. After committing a murder at another location earlier that day, Moss returned home and tragically suffocated his wife in Apartment 40, turning the unit into an unintended crime scene. He went on to kill another victim before eventually taking his own life, leaving everyone baffled as to his motive. The brutality of that day left a heavy cloud of negative energy behind, and many believe it's this trauma that supercharged Apartment 40 with its resident angry spirit. Essentially, the theory goes that Moss's poor wife never truly left, or that some darker presence moved in amid all that violence. Either way, something angry stuck around in Apartment 40, and it clearly didn't roll out the welcome mat for the living. In fact, the ghostly gossip around here got so wild that people can't even agree on which apartment is the true epicenter of the spookiness. While apartment 40 is the star of most stories, some insist that management did eventually reopen 40 to renters, and it's actually apartment 42 that had been the real nightmare all along. Ghosts have a way of keeping us guessing. Perhaps they like a little misdirection. Regardless of the exact number on the door, longtime residents will tell you that a certain section of the complex just never felt right. Even in recent times, tenants living nearby report hearing inexplicable murmurs through the walls and other odd noises that keep them up at night. It's the kind of place where you might blame the noisy neighbors next door for the racket until you realize the unit next door is actually empty. Or at least empty of the living. The paranormal fun isn't confined to just the apartments either. The front office at Chelsea Courtyards comes with its very own ghostly receptionist, the spirit of Billy Boyd, a former property manager who loved the place so much, she apparently decided to keep working after clocking out of life. Billy managed the complex for over 20 years until 1987, when she sadly passed away, but local lore says she never really left. Staff and visitors over the years have described feeling an inexplicable, kindly presence in the office, and occasional odd happenings like papers moving on their own or doors unlocking by themselves. It's nothing sinister, more like a helpful former manager still trying to keep the complex running smoothly from beyond the grave. In a strange way, residents find it comforting that their haunt is a friendly one. Free security and management rolled into one ghostly package. Just imagine calling the office for a maintenance request and wondering if the other person on the line might be Billy's benevolent spirit, diligently taking notes. Not all the specters at Chelsea Courtyards are human. There's also the curious case of the phantom white cat that prowls the property. Tenants have reported seeing a fluffy white cat slinking around the courtyards at night. It seems ordinary enough until it vanishes into thin air the moment anyone tries to follow it. Some say this eerie feline is an otherworldly entity in disguise, perhaps keeping an eye on the place or just toying with residents for its own ghostly amusement. On the bright side, as far as supernatural roommates go, a disappearing kitty is fairly low on the terror scale. At least it's not leaving ghostly hairballs around or scratching up the furniture. In a community teeming with flying objects and phantom whispers, a vanishing cat almost feels like the comic relief, a little four-legged spooky sidekick that adds to the neighborhood's strange charm. Of course, the history of Chelsea Courtyards hasn't been all ghostly capers and playful scares. It has seen real tragedy too. In 2009, a fire broke out in apartment 20 in the dead of night, and a woman living there tragically lost her life. The sorrow of that event deeply impacted the community, and some quietly wonder if her spirit might have joined the already crowded roster of otherworldly inhabitants. While there aren't as many vivid ghost stories about apartment 20 as there are about the infamous 40, a somber heaviness is said to linger around that part of the complex. Perhaps it's just the power of suggestion or the weight of memory, but a few tenants have claimed to feel an unsettling chill when passing by the rebuilt unit, as though the atmosphere itself remembers what happened. In a place with so many tales of the uncanny, even a silent hallway or a flicker of a light can take on an eerie significance. All in all, living at the haunted Chelsea Courtyards is anything but boring. The complex has become a bit of a local legend, drawing the curious and the brave who want to glimpse a bit of the paranormal for themselves. Neighbors swap stories of late-night encounters, strange sounds, and odd sights as casually as others might discuss the weather or last night's ball game. There's even a twisted kind of comfort in the idea that some of the former residents just refuse to move on, quite literally refuse to move out. At Chelsea Courtyards, it seems a lease is a lease, even if you're dearly departed. The result is a community where the past and present blend together, creating a quirky, spooky, and oddly endearing atmosphere. Sure, sharing your home with ghosts means dealing with a few bumps in the night and the occasional disappearing pet. But for the tenants here, it's all just part of the package. After all, in this little corner of Jacksonville, ghost stories come with the territory, and life and afterlife carry on side by side, with a wink, a laugh, and a friendly ghost cat crossing your path. If Jacksonville were handing out Halloween awards, the Florida Theater would definitely win most likely to have a ghostly regular. This grand old performing arts palace, which first opened in 1927, has been entertaining people for almost a century, and apparently entertaining spirits too. Over the years, employees, guests, and even ghost hunters have claimed the place is home to a particularly loyal ghost known simply as Jay. He supposedly never misses a show, though no one's ever seen him buy a ticket. The legend goes that back in the late 90s, a psychic said she contacted a male spirit inside the theater who told her his name started with J. Some believe he used to work there, maybe a technician or a projectionist back in the movie palace days, and he never clocked out. Others think he's just a fan who died before intermission and decided to stick around for eternity. Either way, the ghost seems to have claimed a pair of balcony seats as his permanent spot, so if you feel a chill up there, it's probably not the air conditioning. Now, Jay might be a gentleman, but he's also got a bit of mischief in him. Employees say lights turn off and on by themselves, doors slam for no reason, and the sound system occasionally goes haywire, especially when someone makes a joke about ghosts. One tour guide once told a group of school kids that the ghost doesn't like noise, and right on cue, one of the lights flickered out. The kids screamed, and somewhere, Jay probably laughed his ghostly laugh and took a bow. One of the most famous ghost sightings at the Florida Theater came during a paranormal investigation years ago. The team caught what looked like the figure of a man sitting in one of the balcony seats. But here's the twist. No one was sitting there when they filmed it. When they replayed the footage, there he was, sitting like he was waiting for the curtain to rise. That seat became famous, and when the theater replaced its old chairs, they made sure to keep his seat exactly the same. Apparently, even ghosts get sentimental. Another group of investigators came in later with all their fancy gadgets: infrared cameras, heat sensors, recorders, the whole Ghostbusters starter pack. They didn't find any solid proof, but they didn't debunk it either. So either Jay is camera shy or he just enjoys messing with people. Either way, it keeps the theater in the spotlight even when there's no show on stage. The funny thing is, the theater staff doesn't act scared at all. They treat Jay like a quirky coworker who just happens to be invisible. They even joke about his favorite seat being reserved for eternity. One staff member said they like to think he's a guardian spirit who keeps an eye on the place, making sure everything stays running smoothly, even if he occasionally flickers the lights to remind everyone he's still around. So is the Florida Theater haunted? Well, that depends on who you ask. Some people walk out saying it's the most haunted place in Jacksonville. Others think the only spirit they felt was the one in their cocktail at intermission. But one thing's for sure. The building has a personality of its own, and Jay has become part of its charm. If you ever visit, make sure to look up toward the balcony. You might just see a shadow where no one's sitting, or feel the faint tap of someone brushing past you when the aisles are empty. And if you hear faint clapping after the show's over, don't panic. It's probably just Jay giving a standing ovation from beyond the grave. In Mayport's misty waterfront stands the Old King House, a two-story Victorian haunted mansion built by Captain William Joseph King. Legend says it sits atop a forgotten Spanish graveyard, the resting place of Mission-era Indians. The property's first building burned in 1881, and King's grand house rose from its ashes on that very spot, complete with wraparound porches perfect for creaking in the night. Locals insist the earth still hides those Spanish bones under the floorboards, a curse that opened a vortex for the restless. One of Mayport's favorite campfire tales involves King's Aunt Margarita. Back when the place was a sailor's boarding house, Margarita Andreu was lovely and kind, until a jealous sea captain found her arm in arm with another man. In a fury, he grabbed a pitchfork and plunged its tines into Margarita's rocking chair on the front porch. She died there, her blood soaking into the wood. To this day, visitors say Margarita's ghost wanders in white, and they swear the old rocking chair still trembles on its own. Some even claim you can see the rusty puncture wounds and her blood stains on the chair, a chilling souvenir no living soul would pick up willingly. But Aunt Margarita isn't the house's only tenant. Other spirits have checked in without checking out. The Lady in White, thought to be a young bride who died in a wedding night car crash nearby, allegedly haunts the kitchen, eternally busy at phantom chores. Ghostly legend says she's very territorial, wreaking havoc on any living cook who dares disturb her domain. At the same time, a polite little butler boy apparition is said to open doors for guests and lead them inside. Even a grumpy old housemaid spirit pops up in the kitchen, snapping at intruders like a cranky cook defending her. With so many apparitions, the King House really should have sold tickets as a full-time haunted hotel. The King family themselves fueled the tall tales. Captain King's son, John, delighted in giving lantern-lit ghost storytelling sessions on the porch for $5 admission. Over the years, professional ghost hunters took notice too. Duke University's Rhine Institute parapsychologists and other teams investigated the house as early as 1968, even reporting an unexplained presence. Rumor has it a sci-fi network crew turned up here in the 2000s filming an episode of Haunted Collector. In short, the place has been poked and prodded by generations of skeptics and believers, all eager to catch a clank or a whisper in the old woodwork. These days, the King House is a legend in its own right, woven into every local ghost tour and spine-tingling story session. Guides on Jacksonville's waterfront ghost walks always stop here, daring tourists to sit in Aunt Margarita's chair or peek inside by flashlight. Haunted Mayport events often invite brave souls to tiptoe past the porch at midnight. Even without cameras rolling, storytellers cheerfully recount the creepy chronicles by lantern light, reminding everyone that in Mayport, the creaks and whispers of this house are as normal as the ocean breeze. By now, the King House has earned its place on the paranormal map. Its reputation has spread far beyond Mayport. Ghost hunting TV shows have featured it, and ghost tour fans from Orlando to St. Augustine know to include it on their haunted itineraries. Ironically, the house today is only about half its original size after a 1970s renovation, but it hasn't lost an ounce of its eerie charm. Its legacy of poltergeists, phantom servants, and tragic lovers is intact. Every Halloween it is a must-see, and on quiet nights some say you can still hear the click of Margarita's rocking chair or the high-heeled footsteps of a phantom church service echoing in the attic. Whether you believe every whisper or just enjoy a good scare, the King House delivers classic ghost tour thrills. Its history is as rich as its folklore, built by a sea captain, used as a Catholic mission church, and afterward the stage for jealous lovers and tragic brides. Today it's a proud stop on ghost hunt maps, a place where locals swap lurid anecdotes like trading cards. So next time you're near Mayport, swing by the King House, and if a sudden chill runs down your spine, you'll know why the King ghosts are still at home. If you've ever driven down Interstate 95 through Jacksonville and caught sight of that creepy, half-burned building with broken windows and graffiti that looks like a failed art class project, you've already met the infamous Devil's School. Officially, it was Public School Number 4, later renamed Annie Lytle Elementary, but nobody calls it that anymore. It was built in 1917, back when kids still learned cursive and teachers wielded rulers like medieval weapons. For a while, it was just a normal neighborhood school full of chalk dust and innocent playground drama. Then the highways came, boxed it in, and the whole area went downhill faster than a skateboard on a ramp. The school closed in the 1960s, and that's when the fun, or depending on your perspective, the nightmares began. With no kids to fill its halls, the building became Jacksonville's favorite ghost story factory. Teenagers snuck in at night to dare each other to stay in the basement, and everyone swore they saw something move in the dark. Pretty soon, rumors took on a life of their own. Some said a deranged principal lost his mind and killed students. Others whispered about satanic rituals, cannibal teachers, or a janitor who never left. It was like a Scooby-Doo episode gone horribly wrong. The basement, where all good horror stories like to start, was said to be home to a boiler room from hell. According to legend, a fire once broke out there, trapping kids inside, and their souls never left. Others claimed to have seen a shadowy figure wandering the halls, sometimes peeking out of broken windows as if checking attendance. The brave ones who went in at night said they'd hear footsteps behind them and voices whispering their names. The not-so-brave ones sprinted out before they could find out who it was. Over the years, the Devil's School became the go-to hangout for ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and teenagers who wanted to impress their dates with "I'm totally not scared" energy. Some people brought Ouija boards, others brought spray paint. The ghosts may or may not exist, but there's plenty of photographic evidence that vandalism does. A few even claimed to see lights flickering inside when there was no power. Though let's be real, that might have just been flashlights from other idiots doing the same thing. The place has also caught fire multiple times, adding to its haunted mystique. It's almost like the building itself refuses to die. Every time it looks like it's about to crumble, it somehow still stands, covered in graffiti and bad decisions. Local firefighters are probably tired of hearing, "Hey, Devil's School is burning again." It's basically Jacksonville's version of that one cousin who keeps saying they're going to change but never does. Even though it's fenced off and plastered with no trespassing signs, people still try to sneak in. The police, however, are very much alive and not amused. Every Halloween, there's at least one group that thinks it'll be funny to explore the most haunted school in Florida. They usually end up explaining their ghost hunting adventure to a very unamused officer with a flashlight. Behind all the spooky stories, though, there's real history. Annie Lytle herself wasn't some demon lady. She was a strict but well-respected principal. Students called her Old Pruny Face, which sounds mean but also kind of affectionate, in a "she terrified us into good grades" sort of way. She probably never imagined her school would someday be blamed for satanic rituals and ghostly cafeteria food. Architecturally, the place was ahead of its time. Built to be fireproof and long-lasting, it was once a proud symbol of progress. Ironically, it's now the most fire-prone building in Jacksonville. Time and neglect turned it from a neighborhood jewel into a cautionary tale, and an Instagram hotspot for anyone chasing clout and goosebumps. The legends surrounding the Devil's School are as persistent as the graffiti on its walls. They grow and mutate every decade, new generations adding new horrors. From ghostly children to devil worshippers to the supposed portal to hell in the basement, there's always something darker to tell. But the real story might be less supernatural and more about how a once beloved school became an urban myth machine. So if you ever find yourself near Riverside, gazing up at that eerie shell of a building, don't try to go in there yourself unless you want to spend your night explaining to the cops that you were looking for educational history. The Dames Point Bridge rises out of the St. Johns River like a pair of pale towers strumming the sky, its cables stretched like a giant harp. Officially named the Napoleon Bonaparte Broward Bridge, it opened in 1989 and quickly became one of Jacksonville's most recognizable landmarks. Built to connect the city's North Side and Arlington areas, it was a marvel of modern engineering. A sleek, cable-stayed structure with sweeping views of the river. But over the years, as with many grand creations, it became known for something else entirely. The whispers of strange sightings and ghostly tales drifting through the night air. Not long after the bridge opened, tragedy struck. During a routine inspection, a piece of equipment malfunctioned, leaving workers stranded high above the water. One fell into the river below, barely surviving. The terrifying scene played out on national television, etching a dark note into the bridge's otherwise proud story. Locals began to say that such a violent accident left a spiritual mark, that the bridge carried echoes of the fear and chaos from that day. Some even said you could still hear the clanging of metal or faint screams carried by the wind. As the years passed, drivers began to report something much more chilling. Late at night on foggy evenings, people said they saw a woman walking along the bridge, always alone, her head down, her movements slow and deliberate. But when headlights hit her, she vanished. Some claimed she was the ghost of a woman who had been thrown from the bridge. Others believed she was one of the many lost souls who had taken their own lives there, forever wandering the span between this world and the next. Whatever her origin, her legend became part of Jacksonville folklore. Police have been called to Dames Point numerous times for suicide attempts and tragic jumps. Each time, the stories of hauntings seemed to grow stronger. Fishermen along the St. Johns say they've heard voices calling out over the water at night. Truck drivers swear they've felt a presence in the passenger seat when crossing in the dark, as if someone quietly joined them for the ride. Others report seeing handprints appear on fogged-up windshields, though they were driving alone. The bridge itself sets the perfect stage for a haunting. At night, the fog rolls in from the river and wraps around the cables, turning the bridge into something that looks almost alive. The hum of the tires, the whine of the wind, and the rhythmic sway of the structure all play tricks on the mind. Add in a little local superstition, and even skeptics find themselves gripping the steering wheel tighter as they ascend into the mist. Some believe the haunting is a kind of memorial, a reminder of those who never made it across. Others say it's more personal, that one spirit, a woman wronged or broken-hearted, lingers there because she can't move on. A few even claim that if you stop at the top and turn off your lights, you might see her in your rearview mirror, silent, watching, waiting. Not that anyone's eager to test the theory. For ghost hunters, the Dames Point Bridge is a must-visit spot. Locals have told tales of shadowy figures, disembodied voices, and sudden cold spots despite Florida's humidity. Some paranormal investigators even claim their equipment malfunctions as soon as they step onto the bridge, as if something doesn't want to be recorded. The legend has grown to the point where it's now part of Jacksonville's unofficial haunted tour. So if you ever find yourself driving across the Dames Point Bridge in the dead of night, keep your eyes on the road and maybe avoid glancing too long into the fog. Because in Jacksonville, people say the bridge isn't just a link between two sides of the river. It's a bridge between the living and the dead. And sometimes when the night is quiet enough, the dead like to take a walk. On a muggy Florida night, The air around Fort George Island feels thick enough to chew. Spanish moss hangs like nature's tinsel, and somewhere out there, the ocean hums. At the center of it all stands Kingsley Plantation, Jacksonville's oldest plantation house and arguably one of the most haunted. Built in the early 1800s, the place looks innocent enough during the day, but when the sun dips behind the trees, the air changes. Locals say you can hear whispers in the wind, like the land itself remembers everything that happened there, and it's not about to let anyone forget. Back in its heyday, this place belonged to Zephaniah Kingsley, a man as complicated as the history books can politely phrase it. He ran the plantation with his wife, Anna, who had once been enslaved but became a free woman. Together, they managed dozens of enslaved people, growing cotton and indigo under the unforgiving Florida sun. Today, the tabby walls of the slave cabins still stand, empty, quiet, but strangely alive. People who visit often swear they hear footsteps crunching in the sand behind them, or voices whispering from inside those hollow rooms. If you visit alone, you might start talking out loud just to prove you're not the only one there. Spoiler, you might not be. Every haunted place needs a villain, and Kingsley Plantations is Old Red Eyes. The legend goes that he was once a cruel man. Depending on who tells the story, he was either a guard, a laborer, or something far darker. When his misdeeds came to light, the others took justice into their own hands. Since then, Red Eyes has been spotted lurking in the trees, his glowing eyes following travelers as they drive or walk past at night. Some people say it's headlights reflecting in the moss. Others say, yeah, sure, headlights. Then why did my phone die and my dog start barking at nothing? The debate continues, but if you ever see two red orbs floating in the dark, maybe just don't make eye contact. But Old Red Eyes isn't the only ghost who likes to make an appearance. There's also the woman in white, often seen gliding across the plantation house porch or near the water's edge. She's described as tall, elegant, and carrying the kind of energy that says, I pay attention when you leave dishes in the sink. Some say she's Anna Kingsley herself, still watching over the land she fought to protect. Others believe she's just a spirit who refuses to leave, the type who probably critiques your outfit even from the afterlife. Either way, she's known to vanish the second you look too closely, as if to remind everyone who's really in charge here. Then there's the story of the crying child. Visitors claim that near the old well, if you listen close enough, you can hear faint, sobbing echo up from the darkness. It's a sound so sad it makes your chest tighten, like the earth itself is mourning. Theories vary. Some say it's the spirit of a child lost to disease. Others say it's the ghost of innocence long gone from a place built on pain. Personally, I think if I heard a ghost kid crying from a well, I'd set a world record sprinting back to my car. No disrespect to history, but some sounds don't need investigating. Skeptics love to say it's all just folklore, tricks of the light, the wind, imagination. And sure, maybe the shadows are just shadows. But here's the thing. Even the most skeptical visitors admit the energy feels different at Kingsley Plantation. There's a weight to the air, a heaviness that settles on your shoulders the second you step through those gates. Some things don't need proof. They just make the hair on your arms stand up and your instincts scream, yeah, it's time to go. The real haunting, though, might not be the ghosts at all. It's the history, the brutal reality that people once lived, suffered, and died here. The walls remember what people would rather forget. Every creak, every rustle, every cold spot in the air might just be the plantation reminding us. This wasn't just a house. It was a life, a system, a scar. Maybe the ghosts don't linger because they're angry. Maybe they're making sure we never stop remembering. So if you ever find yourself wandering down that narrow drive toward Kingsley Plantation after dark, keep your headlights on, your phone charged, and your manners ready. You might hear the wind sighing through the oaks, or footsteps pacing behind you. You might even spot those famous glowing red eyes watching from the trees. And if you do, don't panic. Just smile, wave politely, and tell old Red Eyes you're only there for the tour. Trust me, it's the courteous thing to do. Jacksonville Beach has plenty of places where spirits get lifted, but only one where they may clock in for a shift: Taco Lou. The log cabin building on Beach Boulevard wasn't always a taco temple. Locals say it comes with a resident hostess who never quite checked out. Before the margaritas and mezcal, this was the Homestead, an old Florida landmark whose founder, Alpha Painter, is now the most famous regular on the First Coast's ghost circuit. Back in the early 1930s, Alpha opened the structure as a boarding house. Then in 1947 converted it into the Homestead, serving family-style Southern cooking in a cozy pine log lodge. It became the sort of place where you got fried chicken, cornbread, and the feeling that the walls had stories. Alpha eventually sold the business in 1961 and passed away the next year, but the stories didn't stop. When Taco Lou moved in during 2012, relocating from its smaller taco shack down the road, it inherited more than just a new building. It inherited a legend. Staff and patrons started seeing a woman in old-fashioned attire gliding by the fireplace or drifting through the dining room like she had a reservation under Alpha. The Lou embraced it with humor. Yes, the tacos are hot, and yes, the building might be haunted. As the tale goes, Alpha remains a protective presence. Less poltergeist, more maitre d'. Employees have reported harmless pranks, utensils moved, doors closing on their own, and that prickly feeling that someone's standing right behind you when no one is there. Old Homestead regulars said the same things long before the guacamole ever hit the tables, so it seems Alpha's spirit just kept right on working through the remodel. One long-standing rumor claims Alpha is buried somewhere on the property, out back, as some locals say, making Taco Lou not just a restaurant but a very polite graveyard with excellent fish tacos. Whether that's true or just one of those juicy Florida legends, nobody's in a hurry to dig around and find out. If you feel a cool breeze by the bar, it's probably the air conditioning. Probably. Over the years, the restaurant's become known as a favorite haunt for both the living and the dearly departed. Guests have claimed to feel unseen eyes watching them or hear faint humming in empty rooms. Even delivery drivers say the atmosphere changes at night, like the building itself takes a deep breath once the last table is cleared. And if Alpha really is still there, she seems to approve of the changes. Some swear she straightens picture frames or makes the lights flicker when something's out of place. One bartender joked that every time someone complains about the wait, Alpha knocks over a spoon just to remind everyone who's really running the place. So that's Taco Lou's secret ingredient. A century of history, a ghostly hostess who refuses to clock out, and a building that's seen everything from Southern Sunday dinners to late-night taco runs. Whether you're there for the queso or the creepy, remember the house rules. Tip well, enjoy yourself, and if a kind lady in vintage clothes shows you to your seat, just smile and say, "Gracias, Alpha." She's been doing this a long time. Jacksonville's Evergreen Cemetery isn't just big, it's basically a history book with 70,000 plot twists and a soundtrack of wind through live oaks. Laid out in 1880 and receiving its first burial on April 8, 1881, the grounds grew into the city's oldest operating cemetery and even had its own railroad depot so mourners could arrive in style. That's right, all aboard the Grief Express. The place doubles as a who's who of Jacksonville. Isaiah D. Hart, the city's founder, rests here, along with multiple Florida governors, U.S. senators, and mayors. You'll also find a mix of artists, athletes, and a couple of Pulitzer winners. Proof that Evergreen's guest list is tougher to get on than a downtown brunch spot at noon on Sunday. Architecturally, Evergreen brings drama. There's a 96-foot Carillon Tower with Westminster chimes and a mausoleum complex that looks straight out of a Southern Gothic novel. Stand beneath it and you'll swear the air gets heavier, like the spirits are still debating local politics and nobody's winning. History here isn't just carved in granite, it's woven into the landscape. A section was set aside in 1885 for victims of the city's yellow fever epidemic. And over the decades, Evergreen expanded as Jacksonville boomed, even absorbing nearby burial grounds. It's like the cemetery said, "Don't worry, there's room for everyone," and kept stretching like your aunt's Thanksgiving pants. Now for the fun part, the ghosts everyone keeps seeing. Evergreen is famous for 3 recurring apparitions. The lady in violet, fashionably spectral, a man in old-timey clothes near an unmarked mausoleum, sir, the 1890s called, and a woman who turns up by the tombstone locals call the Ugly Angel. These stories have been told for years with the consistency of a family recipe, right down to the goosebumps. Visitors also talk about classic paranormal moments, floating orbs, shadow figures, and that unmistakable "you're being watched" feeling, like the squirrels are judging your outfit, but colder. Evergreen keeps popping up in local ghost tours because it always delivers that perfect mix of spooky and peaceful, like Halloween met a Sunday stroll. The grounds have their own cast of historical side characters too. War veterans, business pioneers, community leaders, and even a few mysterious graves with no names at all. It's less of a haunted attraction and more like a century-old social club where everyone forgot to go home. If you ever visit, be respectful. It's an active cemetery. But if you happen to hear the bell tower chime when no one's around or catch a glimpse of violet silk in the moonlight, don't panic. Just nod politely and remember, you're walking through over 140 years of Jacksonville history. The chills, those are complimentary. Picture this, Jacksonville, 1878. The city is still more pine and palmetto than pavement when a tidy brick hospital rises at what is now 314 North Palmetto Street. They call it St. Luke's, and for a growing, fever-plagued town, it's a beacon, Florida's first real hospital, purpose-built to treat the sick instead of, hoping they walk it off. It cost about $6,000, a fortune in the 1870s, and it quickly became the place where Jacksonville learned to patch people up properly. Within a few years, St. Luke's was pushing modern medicine forward. In 1885, it launched Florida's first nursing school, training the people who'd stand between patients and the era's sometimes experimental cures, picture crisp aprons, antiseptic ambition, and a lot of stern looks at anyone trying to treat tuberculosis with moonshine. Okay, maybe a little moonshine. Then came Jacksonville's Great Fire of 1901, a monster blaze that torched more than 2,300 buildings. The flames galloped east until they hit Hogan's Creek and finally stalled, mercifully sparing St. Luke's. Imagine the relief. Doctors, nurses, and patients standing outside, soot-streaked and blinking, looking at a hospital that somehow didn't go up like a tinderbox. If that's not a miracle, it's at least excellent creek placement. By 1914, St. Luke's needed more elbow room and moved to a new, larger campus along Hogan's Creek. The original Palmetto Street building finished its hospital career with dignity and then started a second act as, well, a lot of things. Private practices moved in, and at some point, The Florida Casket Company next door expanded and used portions of the old hospital. Yes, hospital plus casket factory. That's not on the nose for a haunting. More like putting the nose directly on the Ouija planchette. The bricks endured. In 1972, the old St. Luke's Hospital building made the National Register of Historic Places, officially leveling up from old place with stories to old place with a plaque. Today, the Jacksonville Historical Society owns it, and the building serves as the city's historical archives and HQ. Step inside, and you'll find shelves of local memory, photographs, papers, maps, basically Jacksonville's brain attic. Next door, the former Casket Company is part of the Society's History Center campus, which hosts events and, because Jacksonville has range, even a Halloween bash. Now, about those ghosts. Locals and listicles alike rank Old St. Luke's among Jacksonville's most haunted. Visitors and employees have reported footsteps in empty corridors, disembodied voices, and the occasional fleeting figure in white where no figure should be, possibly patients who never quite checked out, or nurses still making rounds on celestial overtime. If you hear someone whisper temperature, pulse, respiration, after closing, that's either your imagination or an extremely dedicated alum of the 1885 nursing cohort. The building's medical past provides plenty of spooky fuel. St. Luke's treated everything from yellow fever to tuberculosis. Countless struggles and last breaths happened within those walls. Mix that with the neighborly casket factory, and you've got the kind of atmosphere that makes EMF meters perk up and paranormal tour guides rub their hands like it's commission season. Even skeptics admit the vibes are drafty, scientific term. And yet, for all the spectral gossip, Old St. Luke's is ultimately a survivor's story. It outlived a city-leveling fire, changed careers without collapsing, and now safeguards Jacksonville's collective memory, possibly with a little help from staff who never quit. If you go, be respectful. Whisper thank you to the nurses, keep your phone on silent, spirits hate notification sounds. And if you hear footsteps behind you in an empty aisle of archives, well, maybe a docent's coming, probably. On our last stop of the day, we rolled up to the old San Marco Theater in Jacksonville. The place sat like a silent relic in the middle of San Marco Square, its Art Deco charm still shining through the cracked paint and faded marquee. Long ago, this was the neighborhood's hotspot for movie nights and first dates, but tonight, the only thing showing was the eerie glow of the streetlights bouncing off its windows. You could almost hear the echo of laughter and popcorn crunching, but those sounds had been replaced with whispers, creaks, and maybe something a little less explainable. Locals say the San Marco Theater is haunted by a former manager who never really clocked out. According to old employees, he passed away in his office after years of running the place, and apparently he's still trying to keep it in order. People who worked the closing shifts used to swear they saw someone pacing in the office after hours, even when the doors were locked. And every now and then, a flashlight beam would catch a reflection in the window, only for the shadow to vanish when they looked closer. Even when the theater was still open, strange things happened all the time. Lights would flicker, the projector would cut on by itself, and the sound system would hum like it had a mind of its own. Some say the ghost gets restless whenever there's a movie playing, maybe because he's tired of watching people drop soda on the carpet he spent years cleaning. A few staff joked that he just didn't like bad movies and was trying to shut them off himself. Then there's the tale of the shadow figure behind the screen. When the audience cleared out and the theater went dark, workers claimed they saw movement on the stage, a tall shape gliding from one end to the other. Others saw faces in the projection booth window when no one was up there. Contractors who came to do renovations later reported hearing footsteps, tools moving on their own, and doors closing softly as if someone didn't want to be disturbed. Some believe the ghost of the manager is still looking out for his old workplace, making sure nobody ruins it. There's even a theory that he's protective, not malicious. A few brave souls said they felt a cold hand on their shoulder or heard a soft sigh, almost like the spirit was checking to see who was still around. One former employee said every time she tried to leave early, something would knock over her mop bucket, like a supernatural time clock reminding her she wasn't done yet. Paranormal investigators have come through over the years, setting up all their gadgets and fancy cameras. They say batteries drain instantly, voices whisper on recorders, and temperature gauges drop fast in certain rooms. One crew even claimed to capture a male voice saying, "Don't leave." That was enough for them to pack up their gear faster than you can say cut to credits. And that wraps up our ghost tour of Jacksonville, Florida, where the ghosts are just as lively as the locals, and every old building has at least one story that'll make you think twice before walking in after dark. From haunted theaters to cemeteries that refuse to stay quiet, this city proves you don't have to go far to find a good scare. Sometimes it's just down the street from your favorite taco spot. If you enjoyed this trip through Jacksonville's haunted history, make sure to hit that like button. It helps keep the ghosts happy. Seriously, last time someone didn't, we had flickering lights for a week straight. And don't forget to subscribe for more haunted adventures from around the country. We've still got plenty of creepy stops left on the map. Drop a comment below and tell me which haunted place in Jacksonville you'd be brave enough to visit. Or if you're like me and plan to admire them safely from Google Maps. Either way, thanks for watching, stay spooky, and remember, in Jacksonville, the past never really stays buried.